Admiral Yi settled into position and waited. His estimation of Roronajan's resolve went up another notch as he watched the video transmission from down below. "Here is my way to leave this world," the alien said and pointed to his ship, and then calmly took a blaster cannon in both hands, leveled it at the engine, and fired at the engine. It erupted in toxic green smoke, and he stepped back from the shuttle. "I am governor of this region, and I'm not running. Whether I and this world live or die depends on you. Show the Ko we are not afraid and bring glory and victory to our republic." "They'll fight like demons for him now if it comes to it," Admiral Yi said with a rare smile. The majority of the reinforcing ships was made up of aliens, and the majority of those were of Inta Kana and Kana sailors. The tension of working with former masters was somewhat mitigated by a combination of their dire straits and Rorona's reputation as a reformer who welcomed their liberation and took strides even at personal risk and expense to compensate the former captives with land, prosecution of the worst offenders, and back pay that created a new social class of wealthy Kana elites who became some of his most ardent supporters. Privately, Yi had his doubts about his sincerity and the totality of the blame that his late cousins had ended up with, but there was no doubting his efficacy. He'd adapted so masterfully to the changing political climate that he now had allies and admirers across a multitude of cultures, and this display of courage? It can only magnify his reputation. But that was for the future, and it was time for Yi to address the fleet. He flipped the comm channel on and said, "The Ko are as arrogant as they are stagnant. You are as brave as you are many. Show them the difference that makes, and let's end this game." The drums went up across ships and began to stir the blood as the Ko armada came on. They had lost something of their numbers, a few in each engagement, but they had also gained some experience, and they were reluctant when it came to the star, pausing for hours just out of reach to scan the system and ensure they were not tricked a second time. Yi's little smile formed as he watched and saw into the mind of his enemy. He has learned to be wary, but not wary enough. His smile became predatory as the two armadas began to close the gap, and the hollow ships and special vessels ranged out in front and on the wings, acting as sponges to absorb fire and distract the Ko forces. In name, his armada outnumbered the Ko by 5-1. In practice, it was only 3-1, since the specialized ships could act only as point defense and distractions. But the toll of the difference began to show. Explosions blocked out the sun of Har-Megiddo again and again, as warp cores and other drive types were breached and killed the ships wrapped around them, and Yi felt his ship rock and rumble as Ko fire targeted his dreadnought. Bits of metal and burned-up corpses floated freely in space, only to be further ripped apart or vaporized or simply smashed against an oncoming ship, like they were mere bugs against car windshields. The citadel and its supporting platforms continued to act as heavy artillery, targeting large ships and allowing smaller, weaker vessels to swoop in, and the line of Terran ships continued to expand, with those behind sweeping out to the right and forcing the Ko to extend ever farther out and away from the star. Where a ship died, a ship from the rear rushed in to replace it, and the battle of numbers began to tell the difference, at least when there was no one running. Why are they extending the line? They should be concentrating their fire. Don't they know they're weakening their position? The Ko admiral was not the only one to wonder this until, to his delight, he saw the Terran Republic ships begin to draw themselves back. Ah, to ensure they do not get in each other's way as they flee. Yes, yes. He nodded as he spoke. Advance, straight through their center. As the Republic ships began to withdraw, they rallied behind the citadel. 60 Republic ships were wrecks or worse, and the system was now flooded with the blood of its defenders. Hold that line, Yi ordered. Fire when ready. Keep the station at the center. The Ko came onward. With the citadel in front, they had no choice but to either target it first, or be fired upon without retaliation, an unthinkable thing in their hearts. And so they raced in to keep their violation of combat doctrine to a minimum. Finish them, the Ko admiral and his many captains roared. Finish them, Admiral Pike yelled as her ships warped in behind the Ko armada, and Yi began to laugh in his chair as one long, loud noise came over the entire Republic fleet. An entire Terran armada shouting, "Woo-hoo!" All at the same moment, the noise rivaled in its power only by the light show of another 90 ships firing everything they had all at once into the rear of the Ko forces. Smile, you son of a bitch! he hissed as his concentrated fire proved that a Terran dreadnought was capable of destroying a co-cruiser with concentrated fire. And a cascade of destruction began as co-ships were smashed and shields flared in a rainbow of colors before they failed completely, and their hulls were hammered like nails and bent like stalks of grain before the typhoon. Their line of battle collapsed and Republic ships ceased to die, replaced instead by the domino effect of co-ship after co-ship being turned into scrap metal. The co-admiral never offered to surrender, nor communicated in any way. It was, in Admiral Yi's own mind, a fitting end for a stubborn people. There's not much difference between damn brave and damn foolish sometimes. All you can do is hope you're being the first without being the second. And sometimes you fail, he thought as the light show died. And the planet below began to cheer in tandem with the victorious Republic fleet. It took time for word to spread to the war-weary Republic. The want of a victory had left the once proud people with a mix of exhaustion and shame. A shame that was redoubled as reports of their elected president's conduct and policies toward his direct employees and toward the alien citizens. But the word did spread, and the video reports with it. The president, however, found less to celebrate than the rest of the Republic as he listened to the Admiralty. With this armada destroyed, we begin reclaiming the lost territory, and we will make straight for the co-interior, to finally end this scourge once and for all. And in this time of victory, we must give special thanks not only to those who sacrificed all in the defense of the Republic, but to regional governors whose special efforts went above and beyond the call of civilian duty, like Governor Roronajan, who as firmly as any soldier stood with courage against the scourge, putting his life on the line for all of us. Admiral Yi's speech was bad, but was it worse than Admiral Pike's? Without the alien contributions to the fleet, there would be no fleet. We would have no victory. Their wisdom and bravery stand as a testament to the principles of the Republic, and demonstrate beyond any doubt that a brave many can salvage victory from the defeat we would have suffered thanks to the misguided efforts of a foolish few. He wasn't sure. He sat, hunched over in his office, sweat dripping down his brow. I just can't believe it. I can't, he thought as he drew his hand down his face to drag away the sweat. She hadn't actually said his name. Being a political was how the military was meant to be. She had plausible deniability for all the good that did the president in the wake of this new PR nightmare. His firing and the investigation, the questions of his loyalty, those are all shot to shit now. It's like he planned it, like he planned not to win until I'd made an ass out of myself. Now not only are they heroes of the Republic, but Admiral Yi has as good as endorsed Governor Jean. If I'm followed by an alien of all things, history will judge that I was so bad a president that the Republic didn't want a human in charge of it again. This can't possibly get worse. He clenched his hair and tugged, the pain in his body distracting him from the pain in his mind. And as he sought an answer of some sort, any sort, a transmission came through. The shadowy forms of the ascended Co were visible on screen, and their rough voices cut straight to the heart of their reason for calling upon the Republic. You have suffered loss, blasphemers of the Republic, and in our benevolence we are willing to forgive. The arrogance and pride you have displayed, however, must have an accounting. Remove the one you have chosen as your voice and the embodiment of your law, and we will return your captured worlds to you without further deaths. Think not too highly of your recent victory, for all you did was drown in your blood, a mere fraction of our might. President McNamara sat stunned, disbelieving as he watched the demand replay. It took a moment to properly comprehend the magnitude of their words, but when he did, he shot to his feet, shaking his fists in disbelief as he shouted, No, 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 no! I'm the president! I am the president! Before he even finished the last word, the auto data collection system began spitting data back at him. This unique system allowed an AI-guided Quanda system to create questions based off of data and provide the data itself as an answer to the question, essentially reversing the system of creating the question and then searching for data. Instead, it gathered data and generated the results, then created the question itself so that the user would know what they were looking at. And it did so based entirely off of the social networks of Republic citizens. It had its drawbacks. It could not gather unspoken data, the opinions of those who withdrew from technological integration into their lives, or those who simply found social media use to be a toxic waste of their precious time. But it mapped out general societal trends with disturbing accuracy. Should the president resign his office? a 97% return of yes among aliens, an 88% return of yes among humans. Should there be a recall election? The results were near identical. Should there be a new leader elected at once? The results were near identical. The exhaustion of the Republic sat heavy on them all. It can't possibly be worse, he muttered under his breath. And if this is as bad as it gets, I can still salvage this. No sooner had his mind begun to turn on the issue than a reporter's face appeared on screen. We've just received a breaking report. A leaked classified document regarding the starship Tonkin, which was alleged to have been destroyed by the Co in an act of provocation, did not happen. There was no starship Tonkin, no attack. It was, according to our sources, an entirely false story planted on the direct order of the president to help create justification for this war. Oh, fuck, the president shouted, and holocalls began to bombard his office in an instant. Senators from every world, governors from every sector, members of the press, not to mention neighbor nations and allies. The next few hours became a flurry of activity as the embattled president shouted denials to stern faces and furious ones alike. "It's not true!" he shouted and raged, his once fine suit now drenched in sweat, his professionally done hair turned into a mix of sweat slickness and wild disarray. His regal demeanor and intimidating air reduced him to the appearance of a man recently rendered homeless, who was wearing his last and only suit, and gone from functioning member of society to shouting his conspiracy theories to people who hurried away to avoid seeing him. "It's a conspiracy, an alien lie, a misdirection. It's all fake news. The media have been against me from the beginning. I am the president. I should be believed. I didn't do anything wrong. I was acting under my authority as given to me by our Constitution." In his haste and rageful shouts and denials, he overlooked that his last denial sounded much like a confession, and the stories blew up even larger. In the days that followed the revelation and the Co-ultimatum and peace offer, Roronajan watched the administration of the most powerful empire in this part of space fall apart like a house of cards. Administrators fled his side like rats fleeing a sinking ship. Not a one refrained from disavowing him, expressing regret for ever working with him, and more than a few went down the path of petty insults. He was impossible to work for because he didn't understand the limits of what we could do, demanding things we couldn't do, then blaming us as if we decided how things worked. He is a nasty piece of work, never taking responsibility for anything. More a high school bully, no, a middle school bully than a president. All he cares about is what people think of him, which is sad, because nobody should think well of him at all. Rorona almost pitied the man, but not enough to take advantage of the moment. "Lend me your support, and we can elect the first ever alien president of the Republic." Rorona said to the regional governors who responded to his call, "Endorse me, and our Republic will be renewed. The humans might have their doubts still, but I have the perfect running mate." Rorona waved a hand toward his right side, and Admiral Yi stepped into view and addressed the assembly. "The President's last act before victory was to terminate my service to the Republic's military. As such, I no longer have a job. I suppose Vice President of the Republic will serve as an adequate stepping stone. I know there are issues yet when it comes to the Intakana, but I fought the man to my left, and if I am willing to trust him, I hope you will trust me when I say what you admired in humanity is also in him. Our new party will need a name," the Idiaxa governor pointed out. Her long tongue fairly trembled with anticipation, as did her wide gossamer wings. "I believe we already have it," Rorona suggested, and a myriad of different silent glances met the former emperor. "The Humanity Party," Rorona clarified. Savvy politicians, to one degree or another for each of them, it wasn't hard to recognize the value of the name. It wouldn't alienate the majority Terran population, and since the recent viral footage of Sergeant Carney and other aliens who had been raised by humans saying things like, "Humanity is more than skin deep," the principal meaning of the term was ripe to undergo a shift. "My first act as president will be to award medals to the aliens who were overlooked unfairly. My second will to change the draft laws to ensure our species will never be a factor again. I swear if John Brown were still alive, he would have hacked John McNamara to death with his own hands over that ploy." Various nods and rumbles of agreement were returned to Governor Jean. It had been a long-standing story that John Brown had, in his younger years on the frontier, hacked slavers to death with a machete after they crash-landed near his home on the frontier, and that he hung a bloody machete on his wall as a point of pride in his actions. But as to the truth of it, nobody knew. But the sentiment endeared him to one and all, as Rorona's casual praise for his one-time enemy lent him yet more credibility. "We have a party. Now let us get you elected," the governor of the territory most occupied by the sacred dark declared. Mark cast his vote with a smile in his soul. The Co were not far beyond the horizon, but in anticipation of the obvious result, they demonstrated a rare moment of benevolence and held back on their advance to allow the recall election to take place, and in tandem with that, a new election to follow. For him, as with his entire unit, the choice was obvious. Yes, to recall McNamara, and then another to vote in favor of Governor Jean. He said his vote out loud, more than content to let everyone around him know where he stood. It was easy, as he was not just the peace candidate, but he had a reputation for courage and sagacity, and a strangely favorable amount of support in some unexpected places. How he convinced the Khana to support him I will never guess. The NCO thought, but it was a relief that he'd managed it. He glanced toward the video monitor where the news played on. And in today's top story, the Senate has voted to impeach President McNamara for his deception in the Starship Tonkin incident, with the majority and minority speakers issuing a joint statement saying, "The manufacture of false conflict is a breach of the moral obligations of his office, and that cannot be allowed." We still have no word on whether or not he will be criminally charged for his actions, but Sergeant Carney flipped his mobile device to his public video service. The viral clip of his declaration had definitely had its impact. "I wonder if they took their slogan from me. Nah, gotta be a coincidence," he thought as he left the polling place and slung his rifle while he exited the building. There was still a guard shift to pull, just in case the Co tried a surprise attack, but the chances of that were low. Nobody on either side even wanted to fight anymore, he was sure of it. His many battles had not just left him with scars, but with an almost prescient sense of when there was blood in the air and a battle was nigh. And the world, no, the universe seemed as calm as a graveyard now. Specialist Mendoza slapped him on the back as he walked up to take his turn on shift. "Voted?" the young soldier asked, and his squad leader gave a sharp nod. "For the Humanity Party. Straight ticket, there's just no reason for me to vote for anyone else," Sergeant Carney said without hesitation. "I'll go do the same, Mabe. Once we count the votes, we can just go home, eh?" he asked with a hopeful air. Sergeant Carney couldn't laugh in the way his human counterpart could, but he snorted at least. "I think it'll take a few weeks more, but not much. He's just finished, just like this war." "So, is this a victory for us, or did we lose? I mean, we only won a single battle, really," Specialist Mendoza asked and removed his helmet to scratch the dark hair and burned scalp alike. He should have reprimanded the young soldier for removing his helmet on guard duty, but for once Sergeant Carney let it pass. "I'm just a non-com. I can't really say. It sure didn't feel like winning, running from planet to planet. But then, with Admiral Yi destroying over 70% of the Co fleet, maybe we were about to turn it around. It happened last time, too. I guess if we didn't win, we at least didn't lose. That's good enough for me. As long as I get to go home, I don't have enough left in me to care anyway. But I am glad we didn't end up using clones. Not doing that is kind of a win, too. That could have got mighty ugly," Sergeant Carney declared with an exaggerated shiver as he pictured hundreds or thousands of copies of himself being thrown into the meat grinder of war. "It'd feel like sending my brothers out to die just so I don't have to take risks. Thank God we didn't go that road." He then put it out of his mind as Specialist Mendoza said something that Carney missed and headed off to vote for the party that would bring him home again. "It's not true, you can't do this to me," the disheveled President McNamara shouted as he clung to his desk. The service officers hadn't actually grabbed him and dragged him away from his seat, but as 1 minute of denial bled into the next, they were drawing closer to doing exactly that. The heavy-set guard with the bulging muscles leaned forward imploringly, his meaty hands outstretched as if to offer salvation to the desperate. His voice, frustrated and tense, was a sharp contrast to his almost gentle posture. "Sir, the recall election is over. You are not the president, and even if it weren't, the Senate also returned an impeachment vote with only one opposed. It is over. Keep the what little dignity you've got left." "The election was invalid. We were threatened by the Co. People still support me. They elected me. It's just that—" Whatever he was about to say next as he sprayed spittle with his refusals, it was cut off by the noise of the video monitor. And in a landslide victory, Governor Rorona Jean been elected as the first alien president of the Republic of Man. His opponents have reached out to congratulate him on his victory, and we can see him now boarding the Red Dawn to take his long journey to Earth and begin naming his choices for the various cabinet offices, while the Co have begun their withdrawals from Republic territory in earnest, with an expected complete withdrawal date of 2418.11.11.11 of the Standard Galactic Cycle. The aliens are against us. It's sedition. It's treason. The news kept spreading lies about me, President John McNamara declared, his previous rant's continuation forgotten. A whole new one began in its place, but it was the news the security team had waited for, with their duty being to the president-elect, not to the discharged, disgraced, official ex-president. The two grabbed John McNamara by his shoulders, dragged him bodily over his desk, folded his arms behind his back, and began to march him bodily out the door. His howls of protest never wavered, not until they broke down into sobs when he was forced into the short-range transport that would take him into whatever passed for retirement, before his now seemingly inevitable criminal trial. His choked, childish, gulping sobs were punctuated by pointless, flailing arms, as if he were reduced from adult man to petulant toddler. The only clear words he uttered in his isolated rage continued to be his protests of status and treachery. But nobody was listening. Admiral Pike sat across from her counterpart and raised a glass. "Congratulations on the vice presidency," she said, but the former Admiral Yi only shook his head. "You know what we drink to first," he said with a solemn voice as he raised his clear glass and caused the still bourbon to stir with the motion. "To Admiral Nelson and everyone who will never drink again." Susan Pike bowed her head at the sentiment, and after they clinked their glasses together, they drank. "I thought you didn't drink alcohol," she said as the silence stretched out. "I'm a politician now. They expect a few vices. Besides, I watered mine down first," he answered, making a little wan smile when she scrunched up her face in disgust at the very idea of watering down perfectly good booze. "Do you think we'll ever go through that again?" she asked as she watched the video monitor's footage of the Co withdrawing from another world as the president-elect's ship passed by. Vice President Yi would be joining him soon, but for now it was perhaps the last time he and Admiral Pike would share a common table as peers, friends, or perhaps even at all. "If I can prevent it, no. But it's a dangerous galaxy out there, and President Jean will have his work cut out for him undoing John's mess." The vice president acknowledged. "We avoided losing, but we didn't win, and we were arguably humiliated both at home and abroad. Who knows what might challenge us next?" It was a sobering and ugly thought, enough to prompt Admiral Pike to pour another drink for herself, and another for the new vice president, though unlike her, he did not pick up his glass. "I'm putting in my retirement when we get back home," she said. "Nelson's death was a wake-up call, I guess. I've been doing this for a long time now, so long I didn't even notice how gray my hair was getting." She reached up and touched the strands that were now, as she said, were mostly silver. "If we have another fight, it'll need to be somebody with more energy than I have left to fight it. I want to die at home in comfort, not out here." The vice president took a long, slow breath. "You've earned it. But you know what they say about old soldiers. They never die. They simply fade away." In the aftermath of the horrendous struggle, the Terran Republic underwent a rapid transformation. The militia system was revised from 3 border ships to 6, with 1 hyperlane distance maintaining 3, and 2 hyperlanes maintaining 1, while the core systems and shipyards maintained larger armadas of 20 vessels or more, but keeping them permanently docked, save for exercises, in order to reduce costs. The rest of the fleet was scraped, with classified parts stripped out. The remaining ships were sold through a special mercantile program allowing former soldiers aspiring to become traders, thus renewing commerce and, thanks to generous contracts, allowing for the worlds that suffered the most damage to be resupplied quickly with aid from those worlds which had not been damaged. President Rorona Jean's oath was taken standing in the same spot as the first president, to rule over an alien-influenced election after the conquest of the people once known simply as fiends. And he began to review the records of aliens nominated for medals of valor who were denied on the basis of their species. Sergeant Carney being the first among them as the most famous thanks to his viral clip, and the footage of him saving subsequent actions included formal apologies for the policies of the former president, and included generous subsidies and payments for those negatively impacted by the biased nature of the draft. including triple payments in life insurance policies to the families of the dead, adding new aliens to the wealthy classes of the worlds in which they lived. Vast research budgets were allocated to studying the wreckage of the vessels which floated aimlessly around the star of Harmagiddo, and a generous budget for education began to send more and more brilliant minds to study the advanced alien technology. The ethos of the Republic lost much of its militarism and became centered more on economics and technological research to solve the problems that plagued the pre-war empire. And the very name of the Republic of Man was altered, as what it meant to be human began to change. Humanity began to shift from meaning simply Homo sapien to meaning citizen or person, and the Republic rebranded itself the Republic of Humanity. The bill to rebrand their empire, however, included one special provision. Let it be resolved that never again shall the Republic of Humanity be ruled over again by anyone named John. It was this news of his legacy that was the last John McNamara would hear as he was thrown screaming into prison after being convicted of treason against the interests of the Republic. He would descend into madness and die there 3 years later. Opinion would remain divided over whether it was just better for him to be gone, or if it would have been better for him to reach an old age before he vanished into an unlamented history. Susan Pike, true to her word, put in her retirement the very hour her ship docked in Alpha Centauri, and within 6 months she was settled on a country estate in Colorado, looking out from her mountain home over the clear waters of a lake, enjoying the calm until, true to Vice President Yi's statement of the fate of old soldiers, she faded away. The economy and stability of the Republic of Humanity would begin to restore itself as the culture became ever more inclusive of its many citizens, and they brought their own perspectives to strengthen a military that had for too long felt itself poorly led and worse used. With the popular leadership and widespread respect held by President John and Admiral Yi, the once shaky Republic would find itself having a free hand again, at least for a while, until fresh challenges arose to threaten the ascending empire. As for the nature of those challenges, that is a story for next time.